He is a capable partner in providing strategic guidance and support regarding talent-related diversity and underrepresented skills issues. He's a data-driven decision maker, adept at developing and executing strategies that align with organizational priorities, mitigate operational flaws, and exploit competitive advantages to drive results. TJ is also a U.S. Army veteran. He's an MBA graduate and a proud husband and father. And he doesn't like to be boxed in. So all of those things I just read, he doesn't like to check the boxes, right?
That is 100% correct. Not anymore. I checked a lot of boxes early on in the career.
Yes.
But I think we'll get into that, right, with some of the topic stuff.
Yeah. So welcome, TJ, to Talent Tuesday. So thank you so much for joining me. This is where we just talk about all things talent, talent management, talent acquisition. And today we're going to talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the talent acquisition and talent space. Before we get into the full interview where I ask you a bunch of questions, I'd like you to tell a little bit about your story, maybe to the audience, or about what you're currently doing in your role.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually very, very new to the organization I'm with right now, Slalom Consulting. You can imagine, because of the events of 2020 and just kind of the state of the culture, a lot of companies are out there, pulling for diversity and inclusion, individuals to come in. This is an opportunity for me that I'm extremely excited about. There is an awesome team within the organization itself, really from the top down. And so it was a very thorough but fair and competitive process, which is something that I really appreciated from a talent acquisition standpoint. And I'm a month in, but really excited about the position and what I think to come. So I've been waiting for something like this for let's essentially call it 10, 12 years, but I'm excited to be in the position now.
Yeah, well, congratulations on your new role. This is, from our previous conversation, I know that you're super excited about this new company, about the new position, about some of the initiatives that you've been working on, not just at this position, but for, like you said, 12 years. And you shared with me, you feel like you've been saying the same thing for a long time. And finally, you have like that specific platform where you can share things that make people want to make changes rather than just like, oh, that feels really good, thanks for sharing, and then not change.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've always been very, very passionate about. And so like there's no secret within like my background. Like I've been very fortunate to grow up in a military household, both parents, middle class, income from St. Charles, Missouri. I've had a lot of opportunities afforded to me. So I started noticing most likely, I'll probably say like my sophomore, junior year of college. I saw a lot of individuals that were similar to me or looked like me. Saw a lot of, women as well that for whatever reason just, weren't coming back to the university that I was at. And so you start kind of reaching out and chatting with people and you find, some of it to be, economic. Some of people just weren't able to handle the independence of just being, on the university or just, kind of the work that goes with it. And I'm not like a model student. I did very well in my MBA program, but that's probably like the first public education sector type thing that I took like, hey, I'm attacking this like full on, because I was always just interested in like the other stuff that they weren't talking about like in class. So like I get what X and Y equals and Y Z makes sense, but was just more curious about people and just how all that kind of came together. And so coming into my career, I really wanted to work in something along the lines of human capital within just, helping other individuals kind of find their path or march to become the best versions of themselves. Some people just didn't have the same type of like mentorship or guidance that I had and continue to have with, mentors and people within the space now. And so was trying to find the best way to do that. So in the military, I was on the human resource side. There's a lot more HR business partner, generalist type work. Hey, let me create myself to be fully rounded. So I'll focus on talent acquisition, talent management. I still today have kind of like a love-hate relationship within talent acquisition, because you're affording opportunities and there's wins that you get when you're breaking down barriers, you're providing people opportunities to really shine in, certain roles or, do certain things. But there's a lot of, There's just a lot of like, there's a lot of different things that happen within the process. Like some are fair, some are just, really unfair. How certain, people are judged within a space, how certain roles are created, how certain people are elevated. There's a lot of, bureaucracy that happens within that. And, when you're, at the time, 22, 23, 24-year old talent acquisition person within the office, and you're talking to leaders and you're like, hey, I'm not really sure if I agree with our talent acquisition philosophy or how we're getting it done. It's bold to say, but the ramifications of that can be kind of heavy at the same time. But I think people are listening, not just specifically to me, and I definitely don't want it to come across as like that, but there's very much a slew of people that are very like-minded about how we want to run a talent acquisition process to make it fair across the board and what goes into that. And I think you're starting to see those people kind of rise to the top just because it's a natural progression within our career. And you're just kind of seeing some of that resolve kind of come back. So, we kind of had to like buy our time, but now we're in positions where we can influence and hopefully make it a lot easier for the people that are coming after us and for the people that are in the market and doing stuff right now.
Well, thank you for that was a really great explanation of how like you kind of got to where you are, and moving in the talent acquisition space. And when I was looking at our notes from our last conversation, you shared with me um, that since you started in talent acquisition, you've kind of always been like, I got to get out of this. And it wasn't, but you love talent acquisition. It's because the process behind it is so arduous that there's so much bureaucratic BS maybe.
Right.
There's just so much around it that's like we take a very human process and it should be more simplistic and well thought out, and a little bit more intuitive, and we make it extremely complicated, and we put all of these like pressure points on it that are just unnecessary, and we don't use a lot of logic sometimes, which is absolutely infuriating. So I understand how you have like this love-hate relationship, this like struggle within
Yeah.
talent acquisition. Because and you told me, I don't call myself a recruiter. I am 100% a business partner. I am
Oh
a
yeah.
consultant. And
Yeah.
so explain to everybody about you
Yeah.
have a
So
recruiting background, but you think of your role, how you think of your role.
as a consultant within, I mean, the title within, Workday or PeopleSoft or Success Factors, whatever, will say senior recruiter, the pay band, everything else. When I'm working with hiring managers and I'm working with candidates, I consider that role and what that personnel to be is as a talent consultant. I'm working with the HR business partners. I'm talking about our internal equity, who's moving where, how this affects the team dynamics and what is it we're trying to do. It's not simply checking a box and making a hire. I'm concerned about that process of the pipelining. What happens? How do we find that person? What was their experience like, when they chose to apply for us, and honoring that. And that's where it really kind of started to lose me very, very early on. So I graduated 2009. The economy wasn't the greatest. People were, looking for jobs and the companies were in control.
Mhm.
And it was, they were interviewing people, and it was very aware that the company's in control. Like, we may offer you a job, we may not offer you a job. You're going to follow our process. You're going to do whatever this, and if you're lucky enough, you'll get an offer at whatever rate that we want to pay, because it's not like there's a multitude of opportunities and stuff out there at the time. And now, candidates are in charge. And if we're talking
Right.
specifically in 2021 in February, diverse candidates are in charge. And so that conversation has now shifted. And some people within that process get uncomfortable within that setting, because it's not that we're diluting and overly complicating a system. What ends up happening is people make it very, very, simplistic and convenient for them. And that's not really how it's supposed to be, especially when you hold the mantle of a manager or a director or a hiring manager. Like, that's a privilege to be in that position. And sometimes I would feel that people weren't really, honoring that. And so for me, it's not that I'm trying to overly challenge people or be combative within, the context of what it is that we're trying to do. But if you're a hiring manager and you don't prepare for your interviews, you don't do intelligent, feedback, you can't fill out feedback forms, you don't add other people into your process to give you the full view of that candidate so that you can build a successful onboarding for that candidate. But then you're the same hiring manager that's quick to put your person that's been there for 6, 7 months on a performance plan, knowing that you're really just managing them out, because it's easier for you to manage somebody out of a process than it is for you to train somebody, or for you to make the notion or express the notion that you made a bad hire, right? And so other people's careers are paying the price for that, because now on their resume it looks as if they're jumping, when the truth is maybe along the way they had a bad manager, and that's why they had 3 jobs in 4 years, right? Because they
Right.
left one job to go to another job, had a bad experience for 16, 18 months, and then ended up separating from that position. Now they have a third position. But you look on LinkedIn when people are sourcing for the opportunity that would be perfect for them, would be the right fit for them, would increase not only their stature, their worth within the market, but could also lift and elevate that team. They're the missing piece. They're the point guard that needs to go. They're the forward that, that soccer team is looking for. But all these other biases and all these other things get in the way, and people don't have the conversation to call and say, hey, why did you move 3 companies in the last 4.5 years? They'll just be like, oh, that person's a jumper,
Right.
and push the
And
resume off.
you get labeled really quick. And I've done it before. I've been like, oh, there's like 8 jobs in 8 years.
Mhm.
Like there's got to be something. But if you Rawless actually is my boss, and I've worked with him for a long time, and he's actually instilled in all of us like this: you give people the benefit of the doubt, and we don't judge
Right.
people by just their resumes. You call them and you pick up the phone, and that's if you are in talent acquisition, you talk to people, and we talk to everyone. And we've kind of created a system where we talk to literally every single candidate. If they took the time to apply, they deserve our respect. And it's kind of unheard of. We're in a very specialized industry in healthcare, but we literally pick up the phone and call every single person. Now, not every person's going to answer, and not every person is actually a great candidate, but we give them the respect and the time due that we believe that they're due for submitting that application. And one of the things that I find is that they're like, "Oh, that's a really old resume," or "That was like on Indeed," or whatever. Or, "Hey, I'm a military spouse and we've moved from, every year and a half for 5 years." Or you find out the things that are like, "Oh, this person's just not an inherently bad employee. They've
Right.
overcome a lot of obstacles. They've worked for companies who didn't have training programs."
Right.
And in our last conversation, you talked about this, how you've worked with some companies that when they bring people in, they're like, "Oh, we don't have anybody to train them, so we're not gonna hire them." And
Right.
and how they should switch out of that frame of mind. So do you wanna talk a little bit about
Yeah.
bringing in new employees and getting that diversity by being willing to train?
Yeah, you have to. If you're an organization right now in 2021 and you're looking at the census data, which everybody is running to and talking about, the census data and how to get it, closer. If I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm looking at the census data, and there's 27% African Americans within the general population, but we only employ 4%. Like, how are you going to increase that number?
Okay.
And trying to find a short-term solution that's going to it wasn't fixed in 2020 when all this blew up again, right? Which is the first time that diversity has blown up within a general kind of economic and workforce. It's not going to be solved in 2021. There's steps that you can be taking to fix your process as people are applying right now, but then there's also stuff that you can be doing to essentially transform your talent acquisition space in your organization so that you are creating multiple pathways for people to come into the market. And so some of those goals just have to essentially kind of be spread out. So if I'm looking at, 2023, can I increase this number by 5%? Can I increase this number by 7%? What are the pipelines that I'm going into there? What are the grassroots efforts that I'm doing between, the universities, between employee resource groups, between other external partners that are going to create avenues for people to come in? Because what you really need to be looking at is the diversity that's technically not even in the workforce right now. So there's people that are within the age group of, like, let's say 22 to 28. And those are the associates at different places right now. They're trying to find their way within their career. Some of them are targeted where they want to go. You can easily, get access to those people and have intelligent conversations. but 16, 17, those people are going to be in the workforce before you know. They're going to be in the workforce within 10 to 15 years. And the information in the surveys have shown that that generation of workers is demanding that they are part of a community aspect within the corporate environment, meaning they want to see people, and not just people, they want to see leaders. They want to see supervisors and managers, as well as teammates that identify with them, that are inclusive with them, that is not just diversity in the sense where we're checking the boxes and, people feel as if like, oh, we like everybody in the office and we're inclusive. Like, no, I want you to understand what I go through inside the office, outside the office, what I may be carrying when I walk into the office and what I may not be carrying, the mask that I may be putting on, the performance that I feel like I may have to put on for you Monday through Friday. Like, I don't think the generation that's coming after me and the generation that's coming after me is going to do that. I could barely do it for the first 5 years of my
Right.
career before I was just like, hey, like, mask off. I'm sorry. This is TJ. This is how I'm showing up for work. Like, I can't continue to code switch and be who you think I should be in this position, in this role, to check your boxes and to make you feel good about the hire that you made. Like, that's just not going to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're seeing right now is tons and tons of people saying that same thing, which is why the hiring has increased and there's a lot of diverse talent. And when I say diverse, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about generational diversity, I'm talking about education, universities, as well as, minority groups that fit within all those different groups have permission to apply and compete for positions that they didn't have a year ago. And
Which
so
is
what
huge. I mean,
is huge.
finally, it obviously happened because we had tragic events,
Right,
and finally there was some type of reckoning, not across the entire professional workforce, but across a lot of it. And I think it's a
right,
great a great movement, but we're still not there. And I am so
right.
happy you talked about like your mask and about TJ versus Thomas. And I want to get back to that. But I want to tell you, we are finally live on LinkedIn. So
Oh,
we got live on LinkedIn. So we have people watching and commenting. So I just kind of wanted to reintroduce you.
sure.
I'm going to introduce you as TJ Mercer and
Okay.
Thomas Mercer, and you can explain what the difference is. But for everybody that's watching, thank you guys so much for sticking with us. There was an outage with LinkedIn, and now I think we'll be live for the rest of the show. And I just wanted to welcome my guest today, TJ Mercer. He is the diversity and inclusion lead at Slalom in Chicago, Illinois. He has been in the TA and HR space for over 10 years. He is an incredibly strategic, driven leader. He has amazing ideas around how we create inclusion, diversity, equity into the process, and why we all need to take a look at our TA process and maybe rethink some of the ways that we're doing our processes and the way that we filter and bring candidates on board. He's also a U.S. Army veteran. He was in the Army for 9 years, 9+ years.
Not yeah, just close to 10. I was like 9 and 11 months.
Right, and you did HR in the Army, right? You
Yes, so I was
okay.
42 Bravo. It's my MOS. It's a human resource officer. So when I was going active duty, coming out of school, I was going to be field artillery. When I switched and decided to join the National Guard and move up to Chicago, I candidly wanted to put something on the resume that I thought would translate a little bit better, which is a whole other topic and how difficult that still is to kind of transfer. But I
Mhm.
wanted to be able to sit in a room. Again, we've kind of talked about checking boxes. I literally wanted to be able to sit in the room with a hiring manager and say, hey, I'm a human resource officer, and then have that impact as opposed to like, hey, yeah, I was field artillery. I just don't know a lot of companies
Yeah,
that are like
okay. I
blowing
don't
stuff
know
up.
how I don't know how my field artillery experience directly translate, but I can handle pressure really well. Like,
I
I
mean,
mean,
it does. I mean,
yeah.
that's the really great example of how it would translate into the workforce. But again, that's part of that diversity stuff that we talk about, what you were mentioning before. We jumped on LinkedIn. You know, TA people have to have those conversations and really kind of understand what individuals are bringing to the table. A lot of times they'll do the searches, they'll get these lists of military personnel, and they will not to go on a military tangent, but they
No, I
will.
think you should, because veteran recruitment is such a big issue, and we need to talk about
Yeah.
it more.
So my biggest thing for veteran recruiting, the biggest benefit for me as far as veteran recruiting goes, is that you're getting somebody that's loyal and you're getting somebody that's trainable. And we talked about trainable and stuff all the time, but I see 16, 17, or sorry, not 16, I see 17, 18-year-olds, getting fresh off the bus that don't know anything about anything, right? Like they're
Right.
just as clueless as we were when we were that age. For they can handle some of the advanced, field equipment out there. We have the most advanced, military out there. 4 or 5 months after that, they can train the next person on how to do that. And
That's
then they
incredible.
transition and they move to the next thing. And so the thing about it is that, like, you have bad employees, from time to time, and you weed those different people out. The military, is a great benefit. And there's a lot of stuff that you learn. But, just recruiting somebody because they're a veteran isn't going to solve what you're trying to solve. I think there's other things that they're bringing to the table. And then one of the other big things as well too is that I strategically picked the MOS that went with my career map and what I wanted to do. A lot of people come out of the military and go to school, get their bachelor's or get their MBA using a GI Bill, Yellow Ribbon program, or whatever the case, and they do not specialize in what they specialized in the military. And that's very
Oh,
difficult for them at times because you have somebody that maybe was a field engineer. They're interested in finance though. And they go and they get a bachelor's, maybe a master's in finance. And there's no program out there that will train them within the corporate setting to be a senior financial analyst. And, I can't take somebody that's been 5, 6 years in the military, maybe they have a spouse, maybe they have a kid, and then try to bump them to a financial analyst salary and pay them, 60K with a full family, in the Chicago area, knowing that they have 5, 7 years of experience when, but that program's not there. But that's where it comes back to saying like, hey, you want to do veteran recruiting, but you don't want to do veteran programming to bring these people into the organization and make sure that they're successful in an appropriate time frame, because it would take too much, I guess, to train somebody for 5 or 6 months, even though they've already demonstrated, as I mentioned before, within their military background, that we have manuals, we have FMs, we have guides. Like, we ask the right questions, we are solution oriented within that. So bringing somebody in and giving them an opportunity to train, to have a career map to move forward, they'll take advantage of it. And I've seen it happen with some of the limited organizations that I have seen put that stuff into play. It's just not enough organizations putting it into play, in my opinion.
I think, okay, so key number one takeaway from our conversation today is that if you're going to do veteran recruiting, you need to also be willing and able and enthusiastic about doing veteran training. And
Yeah,
because they are trainable individuals, just like most all hires are. If you're going to be bringing in new hires, and you and I spoke about this before, you have to be willing to train people as well. We talked about how a lot of positions these that we're seeing now have outrageous work experience requirements. We talked
right.
about how like brand new fields have requirements for somebody with 10, 15 years of experience. And it's as if it's not, are we not living in reality? Like that job did not exist 10 or 15 years ago. How could the person actually have that job title? So
Right.
kind of reassessing how we put our requirements in our job postings so that we're not filtering out people who are truly qualified for the position, but they see that and they say, I don't have 15 years of experience. When in reality, you only need 3 years of applicable
Experience.
related experience.
But that's another thing that kind of goes into the process. What we were talking about before, when some of these, talent acquisition systems are just convenient within the scope of what we're trying to accomplish. Very often do companies do an audit of the job descriptions and do a true dive into a job description review. And that means not only just the hiring manager looking at it and writing it again. If I have a, senior director of talent acquisition, yes, you can write the senior recruiter job description, and it could obviously report to you.
Mhm.
But have you spent time interviewing some of your current senior recruiters to say, what are you currently doing? what is really necessary within the market right now. Because the truth is, half the time, the people that are writing the job descriptions have been so far removed from the work of what they're describing and how they're doing it.
They don't
Because
even know what the
when's the
actual
last time
job
you owned a
is.
rec? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just like you need to continue to stay invested within that and understand what's happening within that actual job. And then understand what skills people are coming into the market with. And so again, do I have an MBA? Do I have a bachelor's degree? Yes. Do I need an MBA or a bachelor's degree to be a quality senior recruiter? My opinion, no. Now, there's other stuff that I use those degrees for, and I'm definitely not, putting down the education, but I can look. And another thing that happens is because I have the requirements, I'm like, oh, well, I have the requirements. I had to go through the program. I had to spend the money. That's what the qualification was at the time when I was going through it. And so now that I'm in position, I can say, hey, I really think we should review that. And I can make the business case for why, and I can talk about the onboarding for what this person could do coming in now, as opposed to making them jump through all the different hoops. And that's a very big question at a lot of organizations right now, specifically when we're talking about bachelor's degrees. As you know, this generation that's coming up is looking at, do I really need to go 60, 100K into debt?
Right.
Do I really need to have a bachelor's degree to do some of this other stuff? And companies are freaking out, trying to figure out how are we still going to communicate and what are we going to do? What is the skill base? Like there's trade schools that are becoming a lot more popular. Like there's a lot of different things that are happening. So the conversation continues to change. I love that it changes. I just, sometimes get frustrated because people aren't listening to what the market and what, the candidates are saying, as opposed to what the company is just trying to drive, which a lot of times, again, is more convenient for them than it is for the candidates and the people that we care about in all of our messaging.
Well, I mean, I agree with the way that you're saying this, and I wanted to add that one of the things that we found is that our job postings were incredibly out of date, and they didn't have the right requirements, and they were keeping candidates, probably and most likely diverse candidates, from applying because they were just in this, like those boxes that you got to just check off. Where did you? And you talked about this before, like where did you get your MBA? Where did you get your BA? Like those kind of things. I'm hoping will move away from the front line of recruiting and will be more accepting of a variety of individuals. But what we've done is we're like, we have to do this on like a system, right? We have to check our job postings on a bi-yearly basis. Like we have to go through and make sure that our requirements are correct, the way that we're positioning these jobs is correct, the information we're giving is correct, and that we're not including any implicit or explicit biases, saying where the position is or who exactly can have the position. And I think you shared with me, you have consulted with a lot of companies in Chicago, and they're trying to hire new grads, and they fly down or all over the place to go to HBCUs.
Yep.
But they do not have relocation programs. So
Right.
it's like the I hate, and I shouldn't say hate, but I really dislike like how disingenuous of an organization to say that they're going to be recruiting in a diverse way, and they
Right.
go about it on the face, but they don't actually have a plan to bring people in from
Yeah.
diverse backgrounds.
I mean, that's really frustrating for me within just the Chicago market, because I know that there is Governor State, Prairie State, Chicago State,
Right there.
IU, like all these universities that are in our backyard. And do you want to go? I mean, selfishly, I went to one of the big three here in Chicago because I wanted it on the resume as a qualifier, right?
Right.
So I applied to three schools: Booth, Northwestern, U of I. Booth was 200K, Northwestern was 150K, U of I was 100K. I went
Go
to U
there.
of I. And I mean,
Right.
and I met awesome people there. If he's watching, Rich Fry is the person that actually interviewed me. But that's something me and Rich actually talk about on the golf course all the time, because I interviewed for that program, and then TJ showed up, and he was like, I was very surprised.
Oh, right. You
that
interviewed as Thomas, is what you're
I
saying.
definitely interviewed it.
You interviewed as
I
Mr.
interviewed it.
Thomas Mercer. Mhm.
Yeah, because it's effective. And then I got into the program and I just decided like, no, I'm not gonna do that for 2 years. I'm just gonna be me. And my
You were going to
idea,
be TJ Mercer, like who you truly are.
yeah, and just
Yeah.
and just roll with it. But you know, again, running down to a Morehouse, a Spelman, a Howard, out in DC, but you don't have associate level or entry level programs, externships, internship programs allocated to that, and
Mhm.
that was everybody was on those campuses, for the last 8 months, which is great for those campuses. And I love that they're getting the recognition that they believe because they're high institutes of education. But if you're not going to be able to relocate somebody from Atlanta to Chicago, if there's no true value position in them coming up this way, then that resources could easily be spent in some of the universities that I've handed Chicago State resumes to a hiring manager and have, and I'm just like, that's just not fair. If I'm a minority student and I get a soccer scholarship to go play at Chicago State, I shouldn't cripple my career for accepting
Right.
a free education because it's 2021 and I still have first generation college graduates. And I feel like that point gets missed a lot. And then a lot of times as well, it's why I keep talking about other programs and developmental programs outside of the universities, because there's still a very large socioeconomic injustice that happens with people getting funding to go to universities and the demographics at those universities. I've been at companies where some of the biggest pipelines they've had have been at like Purdue, Notre Dame, and Indiana. I had one company where essentially the entire finance department felt like they went, to Indiana University. And I have nothing against Indiana University. There
Right.
just doesn't happen to be a lot of minorities at that
Yeah.
school. So don't complain about your minority and your diversity numbers when you're constantly pipelining at a spot that only has a 7% clip. And if they only have a 7% clip, who are the other 3 or 4 or 5, 10 organizations that are also vying for that same talent? And so you may end up with 0.5% of that 7%. And then you're like, oh, well, our diversity team funding isn't working and this isn't working. And then budgets start getting cut. And it's just like, no, you are asking the wrong questions and solving the wrong problems. And now other people are paying the price. And so what I'm encouraged about right now is that I feel like companies are asking the right questions. They're very earnest and humble and saying that, hey, we have a commitment of what we want to do. And I think that the companies now, because you kind of talk about the job descriptions, my inbox started flowing up May and June. And I kept seeing all these job descriptions where they were looking for somebody with like 10 to 15 years of diversity and inclusion experience. And I was like, well, number one, I don't know if positions like that have been
They
like
haven't
how
been
many of
around.
those have
Like
really
news
existed.
alert, they haven't been around for 10 or 15 years.
And
It's
then
not a real
also,
thing.
we talk about like I'm still young in my career, but I'm very, very close to the group that's coming in and the group that's coming in after that. And so for me, I'm very, very humble. I have a lot of mentors that are chief diversity officers, managers of diversity and inclusion. I look to them because I only have a very short period of window to download the information that they have before they retire in their time well spent, which they have earned. But I also have new ideas that they haven't thought of because our experiences are just different. And so
Right.
if you're never inviting, that's why I say diversity is also a generational thing. If you're never inviting the low 30, mid 30-year-olds into the conversation, have a seat at the table to discuss, then how can you make all these impactful decisions that are affecting all the people that are within my age group that are now becoming managers, senior managers, some going on to be, directors at these organizations. You're making these decisions without their input. And so you're just expecting them to just blindly and freely, carry out your course of action and your plan of action. It's just not how you get buy-in in today's market. That's just my opinion on it.
No, I think that, and I hope that the people that are watching, and we have a couple of questions, so I'll get to those. But I hope that the people that are watching are like, really truly listening and letting this stuff soak in, because diversity, equity, and inclusion have become, in my mind, a little bit of buzzwordy, and everybody wants to talk about them, and everybody wants to like have their Black History Month speaker in, and they want to be like champions of the cause. And like I told you, I consulted with somebody that they were like, we're having really hard time getting diversity candidates, so I don't know what to do. So we paid this diversityhiring.com, right? We'll just
Mhm.
call it that. And we can put it on our website, and we're, they push these jobs out to all sorts of different diverse communities. And I was like, oh, that's great. How is it working? And the individual responded to me and said, I don't really care how it works, but we haven't got any candidates from them, but we're spending the money to try. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? No, that is not. I understand that you're doing this in bad faith, though. You know
Yeah.
that you're not getting any candidates. Why put the money towards diversityhiring.com or whatever it is if you know that you're not getting candidates? Like, do the work, make the changes within your organization,
Yeah.
hire outside consultants, have
Mhm.
the hard conversations. Don't just be complacent and be like, we had a Black History Month speaker and we have a new diversity hiring initiative. Well, that's
Right.
great. What actually happened?
Right.
Have you hired any new diversity? Have you included anybody else? Do you have actual
Right.
equity within your organization? So I
Yeah.
really hope that the people today like are listening, because there is a PDC credit that's available for this that at the end.
Right.
Um, but I would want them to also reach out to somebody like you, and I'm sure that you have a network of people that you could refer them to help with consulting on these issues, because like we said, these positions haven't been around for 10 years. There's not, but
Yeah.
there are plenty of people that can help and come into an organization and help you really truly rethink the way to bring in truly diverse, truly inclusive pipeline of individuals in talent acquisition.
I'm always, and I have a group of people right now that, since I've taken my position, I've reached out to them and said, hey, we're all within this work together. And I know that you're under the same pressure that I am in leading this effort at your organization. And so, I'm trying to have an impact to make it easier for, all the different groups within that realm, but there's also a mental capacity that you take on as well too. So protecting myself, you know, mentally within that, and then working with others as well too, because some don't have the 4 or 5 person team, and some of these companies are hiring one person and looking at like it's like a hero complex. I hear stuff like, oh well, once we hire a CDO, it's like it's like hiring a chief people officer to come in and do payroll. Like you got to give that person the tools and the assets to really, hit the ground running and do
Right.
certain things. And so that's what I'm super appreciative in the opportunity, because I have awesome leaders that I'm learning from, as well as are, challenging my view and my takes on certain things. And it's a partnership. There's a very large storytelling aspect to diversity and inclusion work. And the people that are being affected by it right now are looking at what you're doing, and they're going to be looking for those answers. All these companies that are doing the diverse hires and stuff right now, when we get to the end of the year, there's going to be an audit. Like people are going to be looking. And if you're hired, 37% diverse, but 87% is at the associate level, it's not good enough. If you're looking at organizations that are just doing nothing but external hiring, but not taking care of their house, like why does it gain you to get 10, 12% additional within the diversity scope of what you're trying to report if you're going to lose 3 to 5% on the back end? And if you don't think that your diverse talent is under attack right now, I don't want to say under attack. If you don't think people are coming for your diverse
Right.
talent, then you're just missing everything. Because if I'm in my recruiting seat right now, all I have to do is come to that person of color, that woman within, the group. Hey, are you still missing that 10% that you kind of feel like you got shortchanged? Hey, I'm gonna give you that 10% plus this 20%, and I want to hear about your ideas and talk about the work as well. They're out the door. Like it's just
Yeah.
it makes sense, and
Right, recruiters are coming for people, as they should. And
they
if
should.
and I think you told me that, when you know that people are being mistreated at somewhere, it's not like that they're going to stay. I mean, they're your first ones to go. And
Yeah.
so organizations need to think about it in a more holistic way. Like, yes, we need to bring in people, but we also need to um, keep the people that we have. We need to work on re-recruiting who we have, put them, create, I think we talked about like some career mapping and I don't want to come to this organization if you literally only have an associate level for me and there's nothing else.
Right.
I need to see where I can go with this organization. I need to see that there is growth potential. And if there's not, those people are going to leave for sure.
They
They're not
have
going to
to.
be
I mean,
complacent.
they have to, and there's so many different things that really kind of go into that. But I mean, no one cares about your career more than you do. And
Right.
if just like people are out there right now buying up houses because the interest rates are super super low, don't think that your diverse talent isn't looking at positions that maybe they didn't think they'd be able to compete for, a year ago. And if they can go out there and they can get it to better enrich themselves, their community, and their family, I don't blame you. Like you got to be out there and you got to be looking at stuff.
So this might be a kind of hard question or an answer. 10 years from now, is diversity still a commodity in the workplace?
10
Or
years from now, I hope it's not. I hope it's more norm. I hope it's just something that's common within the
streamline
workplace.
and yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I remember posting something maybe like 8 years ago, and I was like, I can't wait for the time period where I just apply for the position and I don't have to check any of these boxes, right?
You don't have yeah.
But at the same time, there's been positions that I've applied for that I checked the boxes because I thought it'd be in my benefit. Times where I didn't check the box because I didn't think it would be in my benefit. And there's a game that you play,
Mhm.
as a diverse candidate within the market, as a woman within the market. And that's the stuff that we're talking about, where it's like, hey, like this is the conversation we're trying to have outside of the Instagrammy, like everybody feels good, diversity, big
Yeah,
melting pot type of thing. Like
right.
if I'm a consultant and I'm an African American male consultant and I look generally young because I still can't grow my beard, there's going to be tons and tons of engagements that I go to that I have to, number one, qualify myself as soon as I walk into the door. Even though my company sent me to you as the consultant, as the lead consultant, that meaning
Mhm.
that they entrust me to hit the goals and the objectives that you did. But me walking in as me, I have to qualify myself. And then also, I have to make you feel comfortable with me being there. So I may have to schedule like bi-weekly check-ins with my manager, who may be, I don't know, let's say a Caucasian male or something else, to essentially kind of check in. And he's just going to give a thumbs up to say, like, yeah, I'm seeing what TJ's doing and I think it's good. So that person feels comfortable. And so I'm essentially on this engagement, maybe 3, 4 months, wearing a mask. They call it code switching or whatever.
So are you
I'm
Thomas when you're doing that then? You're like the very
that's what I used to
professional?
call it. That's what I used to call it. But people always talk about how that affects people's performance, right? And
Right.
I talked to somebody about that. Said you're talking about performance from a job standpoint. I'm talking about how people have to perform. I'm talking
Right.
about performing, meaning like Monday through Thursday, I'm somebody completely different, and
Mhm.
then I get my weekends to myself where I can be myself. But the mental strain that takes on individuals to do that, and
To
some
be
people have been
somebody
doing
completely
their
different so
entire
that
career.
yeah, so
And
that
yeah,
you can make people around you feel more comfortable so that you don't
yeah,
take up too much space. Oh,
yeah.
I actually was just speaking with earlier today, an individual who we've talked a lot about code switching, and she is a incredibly knowledgeable black female who has worked her way up in the industry, and she is at a very high level C-suite now. And she is like, "You don't even," she's like, "It is exhausting. I code switch every single day, and it
Yeah.
is exhausting. I am not my real person until I'm at home or on the weekends. And at work, I'm a completely different person, like 100%. And it gets exhausting. And it is, it's performative professionalism. And w- I wish that we lived in a society where she could bring her whole self to work every day because it was included and it was fine. But she can't yet. She can't.
And
And
the thing about it
it's
is
just
that
not accepted.
and the thing about it is that if the companies don't know, but like they're happy because she's performing and she's doing well.
Mhm.
But if she could bring her full self
Oh, she would
to the
be
role,
even better.
she would be probably a monster in that role. Your
Oh,
entire
yes.
organization would shift. Everything would change. And so when I talk about Thomas versus TJ all the time, it's never like, like obviously Thomas is my name. I'm named after my father. That's how I go by TJ. I carry a lot of great pride into that. But yeah, like I walked into interviews, I walked into offices, and I would check the box. Hey, African American male, articulate, veteran, educated scholar, like whatever. And they would be so enthralled with their hire because it checked all these boxes. Like I've been at companies where literally it almost felt like I went on like a tour, like my first month, just
Like, oh,
meeting,
look at
like,
this wonderful, well-educated
yeah.
Black man. He's wearing a, like, what
It's
is, it's
like,
2021. Like, how is this abnormal?
that was actually probably maybe like my third job, like at a school or something like that. I remember I got flown down to like Atlanta. I was there for like 2 days, me and all these people, until like I met with some other African Americans, and they were kind of like, "Why are you here?" And I'm like, man, no.
They're like touring you through the office. Like, look.
It would feel, I
Yeah.
mean, at times, and it feels like that, and then sometimes now, like companies are very, quick to be like, look at all these numbers of what we did, like diversity, and look at us, look at us. And it's just like, okay, like what employees want to feel, they want to feel as if they can walk in and be themselves on day one. I strive to make sure that my candidates have an authentic process and are competing for the process. Like I feel bad sometimes in a sense where it's just like, it's hard when I've taken a job. I got a job offer in reputable company or whatever the case, and I feel qualified, and I know I'm qualified, but I'm guessing the process and wondering to myself, hey, did I get this position, or did Thomas Fox Mercer get this position? And did I take this position did I beat the people in a competition? And that's how I look at it. Like talent acquisition for me, because I'm a competitor, I'm an athlete. I know you're a former athlete as well. It's competition on an equal playing field. But I'm pulling out all these other code switching tricks and how I prepare and what I'm doing because they aren't expecting it from me. And because they weren't expecting it from me, it's not only it only meets their expectations, it exceeds it so much because they weren't looking for it. And so I use it to my advantage within my career, but then at the same time, it doesn't fulfill you in a sense of like achievement because it's like I don't know if I truly got it or if I just played the game the right way, which is not how you want your career to go in a
So
sense.
So we have a question in the chat, and I
Yeah.
missed a whole bunch. I'm so sorry, you guys. One of them is, what can companies do to allow employees to bring their full selves to work? What advice would you give to companies?
Yeah. So what I tell companies to be transparent and authentic in their approach to what it is that they're doing. Don't put all of this on your employee resource groups. That was
Yeah, it
something
can't be
that
ERPs.
it can't just be, yeah, it can't just be the ERGs. It needs to come from the senior leadership. It needs to come from the executive leadership. They need to understand that it's not a defensive assignment type of thing where I know sometimes, if I was a white male in a corporate environment, sometimes I feel like the rhetoric and the conversation, it almost feels like very accusatory in a sense,
Okay.
meaning like you're there because you had all these advantages and everything else. And I don't think that's the right approach within it, right? And what I'm trying to do is open up a dialogue and a conversation to say like, hey, what is your genuine experience? What questions do you have? How do you feel about our responses to certain things? And then take those actionable items, but don't put it on the shoulders of the people that are already feeling the biases and marginalized and everything else. Like if I'm just be candid on the conversation, right? So
Yeah.
I've had, friends and associates that are at other companies when everything happened with the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor made in June, a lot of companies made Black equity boards or they were doing this or they were doing that. They overpowered their Black resource group, almost alienating the other resource groups. And then you're putting the weight on trying to find the solution on the people that are being marginalized by the system.
Right.
And
It's
that's
like, you
not,
guys help us figure it out. What can,
and but
yeah.
the truth is that this information, we know this information. If
Mhm.
I'm speaking just as a minority, as an African American male at this exact moment, I know this information. I'm learning and I'm continuing to learn and to grow. But if I'm 7 steps ahead of you in this journey, the engagement that I need from you is to be able to absorb and take what we're saying and not think that we're accusing or blaming you for this. We're
Right.
trying to give you information and guidance on how to partner with us as we're moving forward. And so I think what I expect the companies to do is to really just own their role in the context of what it is that we're trying to achieve across the board, right? And so just it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be, how would you, it's okay not to know. It's
Right. It's
okay
okay not to
not,
have the answers, and
it's
it's
okay
okay.
not, yeah, but it's not okay to not ask the question because
I
of
agree.
your insecurities of how you think it's going to either make you look, or your insecurities because you don't know the answer. Because the truth is, a lot of times, no one's expecting you to have the answer. They're expecting you to engage into the
Start the
conversation
conversation.
so that we can
Mhm.
find the answer.
And I think that goes to being authentic. Like, we want to live in a space where you don't have to code switch every day. And if we can start creating the space for ourselves and for those around us and emulating the type of experience that we want in our workplace, if I can bring my full self to work, even just a little bit more every single day and be, who I truly am, while I'm doing great work. If I can be authentic, I expect that as well I want my company to do the same thing. I
Mhm.
want authenticity. And I don't want my company to pretend like bad things aren't happening in the world. I don't,
Right,
and I also don't want my company to pretend like because we may have hit a ratio that we're all of the sudden
right.
inclusive or that we're all of the sudden very equitable. It's an ongoing situation and we need to always move forward. So, one of my questions for you would be from a TA standpoint, what can like just a recruiter, just a TA rep, what can they do to start thinking about bringing more diversity and inclusivity into the process?
So I tell people it starts with the data. So I know in the beginning you kind of read the blurb that I have on my resume and on my LinkedIn when I talk about data driven. Um, there are tons of companies that their pipeline is full of diversity and it's not making it to the hiring process. So if that's the case, then you adjust what you're doing from a TA standpoint, and it starts with inclusive interview training or exclusive sourcing training for your TA team. And some companies, they don't have a pipeline of diverse talent. So you start with inclusive pipelining, grassroots efforts. And so that's why I say the data that lives within your applicant tracking system, you know what's there. And so if it's pipelining is good and you see that the candidates are making it to the process and they're not being selected, okay, well then now I know what to solve on that front. That means I need to be doing some inclusive interviewing, hiring with my hiring managers. I need to do some behavioral based, maybe interview training with my hiring managers. I need to look at how they're preparing for the interviews, what questions they're asking, what feedback that they're giving, how are they debriefing, what are they offering from a salary standpoint, going through that, right? And I'm looking at that information. If all of that is good, and there's some companies that have awesome numbers in that realm, but maybe your turnover is really bad, right? You're consistently losing women in tech. You're consistently losing Latinx consultants or something within, the scope of that. So you deal with that issue. And I feel like what ends up happening is people look at this, and diversity is such a huge mountain. And I literally just heard this today, but you find the data, you make an actionable item, and then you do one thing, right? So I'm not trying to solve the entire process because different things are going on, different things are going on.
Okay.
But I would need to find out what I really need to be answering. And then I take that first step to solve that issue.
And you just
And
do
then
one thing.
you do one thing.
Mhm.
Like there's all these companies out here that are constantly still been having conversations since last May, since last June, been talking and talking and talking. Number one, people are exhausted because 2020 was an exhausting year between COVID, all of that, the
Yeah.
election, everything else. They're exhausted about talking about that. They want to get to the actionable items. They're ready and they're willing to go. What they're looking for is guidance and how we're going to approach this. What is it that we're going to do right now that's going to either impact us right now, or what are we doing to solve for the future as we're moving forward? Because maybe we haven't recovered fully from 2020. Maybe we're not going to
No, I don't
grow.
think we have.
Yeah. But some companies are like, hey, we're going to hire, 20, 25%, this year. We're going to grow in that facet, right?
Right.
Some companies are like, hey, we're only going to grow in 5%. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So if
Or
you're
we're
only going to
going,
grow,
right.
if you're going to grow in 5%, then you need to work on talent acquisition from an internal standpoint, because you got a lot of 3-4 year people that are at the, I don't want to call it the tail end, but they're getting close to their runway within their career map for
Right.
that specific role. You need to make sure you're having intelligent conversations with them before somebody like me gets on LinkedIn and is like, hey, check the chat. And then they're out the door, right?
Right.
Because that's what we do as recruiters. And so I tell people like, hey, look, the data is not going to lie to you. And if you're not collecting the data, then that's your one thing.
Right.
Start collecting it. Start collecting it. Find out what you need to be collecting. Because people will be like, I really don't know. We don't have an applicant tracking system, or we're not doing this. Like, you should probably do that.
Right. Keep track. Right.
It's important.
Step number one.
Right.
So, okay, well, I don't want to go for too much longer. I know we're probably over our time here, but I do have one more question for you. So I'm a big reader and I also love podcasts, and I love to ask my guests if they have any recommendations for great books or podcasts that I should check out or that the audience should check out.
So myself, I've only been reading right now Barack's last book. So I'm almost done
I
with.
just downloaded it. Is it amazing?
It's really good. It's
Okay.
really good. There's some other stuff that it's on my list right now, and it has to really do with socioeconomic around like wealth and like economy, because I think
Okay.
that's the next kind of like largest conversation around that, right? I still think that you you have a lot of people that just for whatever reason aren't getting the opportunities to do certain things, and a lot of it resolves around wealth, generational and stuff like that too. And it could because I have a generation that's kin to me, that's connected to me, that's coming up me with my son, but it's just something I'm paying attention to a lot. So I can try to find the link for the book that a friend just shared with me, and I'll share it with you, and you can send it
Yeah,
out.
we'll drop it in the comments, so it'll be on the
Sure.
replay. So thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for all the guests. I see that Carrie Ann Gallagher, thank you so much, and she says, "Be the change you want to see in the world."
100%.
Fun fact: I literally have that tattoo on my foot. Like for real. But it's in Spanish. It just says be the change. So I totally agree with you, Carrie Ann. Wonderful comment. But thank you guys so much for sticking with us today. And thank you, TJ, for being my guest today. And I want to have you back when we can have like a full non-discombobulated situation with the technology issues. But I think that you just have such an incredible insight in the way that you explain and talk about issues that are tough for a lot of people to talk about. I feel you provide such an open, safe space, and you're so understanding. And I really appreciate the way that you have talked to me and informed me and listened and also shared. I really, really value our time together. So thank you so much.
No, absolutely. It's been great getting to know you. I hope you guys are doing well down there in Texas. I was thinking about you guys as everything was
It
happening,
was
but hopefully
insane, but we're okay
you guys are
now.
good. All right, excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to many more conversations. I know we didn't get to all the questions on
I
LinkedIn.
know.
If I see some, I'll definitely see what I can type up and maybe answer some stuff as well too. But I'm looking forward to talking again soon.
Okay. Well, thank you so much and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you, everybody on LinkedIn land, and we'll see you next week on Talent Tuesday. So, TJ, we just stay on for like a minute or two. I'm so sorry. We're like over time.
No, you're good.
And then Jonathan cuts it off of